The rules of tonight are, I'm going to do about 10 minutes on a couple of issues here, and then after that it's basically open mic. Open mic, if you could just ask the question, because I got a feeling there'll be a lot of people walking up and wanting to hear the questions or be able to ask their own questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. Some questions in the past have been very easy to answer, and some have been more rhetorical in nature, but I will do my best. So with that, why don't we just go ahead and start with a couple of, these are more of the civics types lessons here. They're important because they this frames a lot of the issues that we deal with in Congress, in both the House and the Senate. And that's the budget. So our budget for spending this year is $3.455 trillion. Now, this is divided up into two sections. The purple is the mandatory spending. That is what, by definition, mandatory means exactly that. It goes on day by day, week by week, year by year, without Congress being involved. We can do oversight of specific mandatory programs like Social Security, Medicare, some of Obamacare that's in mandatory spending, but that's all we can do. It would take a law to change anything in the mandatory spending category. Now, in the blue section is where 100% of the fiscal fights in Congress occur. Within that purple section are 12 appropriation bills, of which the House has passed about 4 or I think 5 of the appropriation bills for each of the major agencies. And then the Senate, I don't think it passed any of the appropriation bills. That's important because on October 1st, that is the federal New Year. And if the appropriation bills are not signed into law, or what's called a continuing resolution to keep the government open is passed, if that doesn't happen, on midnight of September 30th to October 1st, the government closes down at the strike of midnight. Now, the president has inherent authority to keep the parts open that are essential, and the president usually declares such things as Medicare as essential, and Social Security checks going out as essential. But that would be up to the president to determine which is essential. Now, I also want to point out that part of the discretionary is the military budget, and that's a big chunk of the discretionary budget. So when you talk about our military budget, that is 18%, then everything else that we fight over is in the other 17%. Now, keep in mind, $3.455 trillion is what we are spending this year. Look at this. This is the money, the revenue that comes into the federal government. Most of it, 47%, is through income taxes. Then the payroll taxes, which everybody pays on their first earned dollar, they pay into Social Security and Medicare. And so that's the red part, is your payroll taxes. That is basically, it goes in from your paycheck into the Treasury, then the Treasury sends out Social Security checks and pays doctors under Medicare. And then the others are cats and dogs that add up to about 19%. But it's the revenue of $2.8 million or billion, trillion, sorry, 2.813 trillion. So what it means is between the 3.45 in spending and the actual revenue coming in, there is a $642 billion deficit. Now, it's interesting because we're almost giddy that it's down to 640 some billion. Just a couple years ago, it was 1.3 trillion. And it went 4 years of being over $1 trillion. And that goes then to straight to the national debt, which is 17 trillion. That's an important number for us, is that 17 trillion, because our GDP, or the size of our economy, is $17 trillion. And most economists will tell you that when your debt exceeds the size of your economy, that you're going to see slow job growth and a growing economy. Now, arguments could be made that's what we're seeing right now. Now, our country's dynamic enough that we can withstand debt like that without a collapse, as we've seen in Greece and Spain, because they have less dynamic economies and they can't print their own money in the European Union. So, and we have lots of assets in the United States government too. So I just want to put that up out there, because when we talk about our spending bills, when we talk about sequestration, when we talk about continuing resolutions, when we talk about the costs of the Affordable Care Act, all of that in our mind, whether you're Republican or Democrat, is framed by those numbers up there. So I thought it was important to share those numbers with you. Now I want to move to foreign policy with Syria, because when I've been out and about over this last weekend, especially from Friday on, that seems to be the most often asked question when I've been out and about. And so here's my position. For any military use by the United States military, the test that I apply is it in our national security interests? Now, the question will be, is bombing or sending cruise missiles into Damascus within our national security interest? Certainly Assad is an evil person, using chemical weapons on his own people, killing thousands of them. There is no doubt that is a war crime. That is a war crime, and he should be tried as a war criminal. The question still is begged, does that require military, or the use of our military? Going around the district in the last several days, most of I would say 99% of the people have told me don't use military action. That people are very against us sending missiles into Damascus, into Syria. And I will tell you that I think the president has made the case that Assad was responsible for the use of the chemical weapons. It was not the rebels. Now, that still hasn't answered the question of whether it's in our national security interests. So if the vote was today on the facts that have been provided to us, I could not vote to use the military to send missiles into Damascus. So, when we get back to Congress on the 9th of September, we will be obsessed with Syria. We will have several hearings, we will have top secret briefings, the Foreign Relations and Armed Services Committee will have votes. I don't know if we will take up what the Senate passed out of committee today. Of course, they're not in session officially until the 9th too, so they can't have a floor vote on the Senate-passed resolution authorizing a missile attack in Syria. So all of this will occur next week. I'm going to tell you there's going to be very little oxygen left in the air to discuss anything else like the continuing resolution or appropriation bills that have to be completed by the end of September, or the debt limit issue that comes up the first week in October. So I understand that we'll probably have a lot of questions and comments on immigration. So let me give just a little bit of process. Since we have these issues of Syria that have to be done next week, and the continuing resolution and the debt ceiling, there's no room to do really any other type of bills on the House floor in September other than those. Those will require a lot of time, a lot of debate. So if any of the immigration bills that come up in the House will be possibly, I won't guarantee this because I'm not the majority leader who makes those decisions, but if the immigration bills in the House were to come to the floor, it would probably be later in October and maybe even November. Now, there's also no guarantees that they'll even come to the floor, although in one of our last briefings before we broke to come home and talk to our constituents, to talk to the people, they did suggest that the fall agenda would include a series of immigration bills in the House. As I recollect from that discussion, those immigration bills will be a border security bill out of the Homeland Security Committee, authored in part by Mike McCall, the chairman. There will be an E-Verify mandate on employers that they have to verify Social Security numbers before they are allowed to hire. That will be out of the Judiciary Committee, and then the Judiciary Committee also has things like a guest worker bill that may come out. There's going to be what's called the Skills Act, which would allow those that have master's and doctorate degrees in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, to be able to stay in the United States, as opposed to under a student visa when they're finished with their education, they have to go back to their home country for 2 years. So we're in an engineering and science and technology and math contest with several other countries, and it doesn't seem that sending them back to compete against us is probably the best philosophy. So I do expect, but not guaranteed, that we will have those immigration bills. There are some people in Congress that don't want to vote on any immigration bills because it would then go to conference with the Senate. And there is not a lot of support in the House of Representatives for the Senate version. I get asked about voting for the Senate version. That's not going to happen in the House. That bill will not be put up for a vote in the House of Representatives. So, with that, let me introduce a good friend of mine and the mayor of Bellevue. And appreciate Rita coming here tonight. And would you just say something to? She's from Bellevue, so I used to represent Bellevue for 14 years. I was just redistricted out. But I still find myself in Bellevue quite a lot, and maybe even some Bellevue people came up for the deal tonight.
Thank you, Congressman Lee Terry. You started right off without an introduction, but I want to make sure we give a hand to Congressman Lee Terry. He is your representative now, and the idea is that we all work together with him. So welcome and thank you for being here.
Well, Rita is actually my moderator for tonight, and I just found that out. So I apologize for not reading my notes. My moderator was supposed to open and also to help with the questions. And so, sorry, Rita, but I apologize.
It's okay, I'm a little short, so I can But I want to thank everyone for being here today. I really feel like I'm among friends here. We've got the Hispanic Latino Chamber of Commerce here tonight, which both Larry and I have worked closely with. So thank you for being here. Last night at the City of Bellevue, we had a public hearing on our budget, and we did have standing room only, and it was a wonderful conversation. Some of them were a little afraid that it would be a little aggressive, but I tell you what, just like tonight, I see some great people here this evening, and I'm hoping we have that exact same kind of conversation, because your congressman needs to take this message back to DC, and we need to work together to get some things done. So, on that note, it looks like we have a lot of people here this evening. We'd like to keep your comments to about 3 minutes. Larry Burke's here with the City of Bellevue also will help us with time. We welcome any comments, any suggestions, and messages that you'd like the congressman to have.
Mayor Sanders, do you want them to come up here to the microphone so everybody can hear?
What we'll do is we'll ask you to come forward to this microphone. If you could state your name, that will help us a lot. There is a 3-minute timer here. He will give you a 30-second warning. Try to keep it right within 3 minutes. We understand if you have to go a little bit over. But be respectful of everybody's time here, so everyone who would like to speak has that chance to do so.
And Rita, feel free that after their comments or question, maybe follow up.
Absolutely, and anytime you feel like you want to interject.
You have full carte blanche to do that.
Absolutely, so I'll be off to, when you're done here, if you want to just step through the aisle, but I'll be right here, right up through here. All right, here we go.
Congressman Terry, my name is Kathleen Erickson. I'm a Sister of Mercy, and you've heard from us a lot, I think. And so you'd probably guess that I'm very disappointed to hear that you're saying that we will not probably be dealing with the immigration issues when you get back into Congress. But I want to remind you, you know that so many hardworking families here in Nebraska are affected by a really outdated and broken immigration bunch of laws. And that there are a lot of families that have mixed status, people in the family who are citizens, but some of the members don't have documents. So my question is, if you get a chance, if it gets to the floor, will you work to keep Nebraska families together? And also, will you work for an earned path to citizenship?
So there's two questions in that. The first is, and I really appreciate the succinct nature of the question too. That was very good. There's two questions. One, will I work to keep families together? And under what I have publicly stated at other town halls and in private meetings, I would accept a different than when Mr. Armendarian and I had some discussions, a bill, a comprehensive bill that would create a legal status for those here as long as we have the border security and the E-Verify and the necessary reforms to make the immigration process workable. Because anyone that has to wait 10 to 15 years to come in legally, that's not a workable system, and I agree with you on that, sister. So those things have to be part of the package. Once we can have the border security and the E-Verify system, then I am willing, and this is movement on my part here, to come up with a legal status that would keep families together. So yes on the first one, and this is where the controversy will be, and I admit it's controversial, and I'm not going to please you on this answer, is no to a pathway to citizenship. I will do a legal status, but not the pathway to citizenship. Maybe there's a way we can work out where those that truly want the brass ring, that highly valued citizenship, maybe those are the ones, those could go back to their home country and start the new process to come through where they would be then legal and be on a pathway to citizenship. But if they stay here, we'll give them, I'm in favor of a legal status, but not the pathway to citizenship.
William Forsey here, and I'm going to take a different route. What I'm looking at is when you had your charts up there, the payroll tax. Republicans are noted for wanting to have a flat tax. Why not have a flat tax and take the caps off of the payroll tax? Right now, a tax is 6.2% on up to $110,000. That equals about $6,800, give or take. Now, for anybody earning less than that, they're paying the full amount of tax. They're paying that 6.2%. Now, you get to $200,000, effectively that tax rate for that person then drops down to 3.4. So they're getting a nice tax break just for all that extra income. Go to $250,000, that effective tax rate again drops to 2.7%. So again, they're getting even a better tax rate. And if you're a millionaire, you're down to 0.068%. To me, that is extremely unfair that you're giving all these nice tax breaks on these payroll taxes, which would, in your case, help the deficit, bring it down, make Social Security and also make Medicare and Medicaid much more solvent over a long period of time. So why, or would you be in favor of removing the cap on that $110,000 and making everyone basically pay the fair amount of 6.2%?
There's a lot in that question, but I'll answer you succinctly as you and I have had this exchange before. I am willing to put on the table as part of a bigger package of reforms to increase the cap. Now, you said remove it. I've gone to open to increasing the cap. The issue of why there's even a cap, I think, needs to be put out there to chew on a little bit. And in Social Security, by the way, you pay 6.2 cents of every dollar you earn up to, what is it, 107,000 now or something?
110,000.
110,000 now. And after that, you don't pay that 62 cents on the $110,001. Okay, the reason that was put in 1935 was a cap, and that cap has gone up every year, is that there's also a cap on the benefit that you can get in Social Security. So they wanted it to look more like an annuity or an insurance product. And so therefore, after a certain point, you're just putting money into the system, but you'll get no gain from that money. So part of that is, if you're going to keep a cap on the benefit too, then, okay, let's raise the cap a little bit, but not let's take it off, unless you want to have a real insurance type of a product where the more you put in, the more you'll return from that. And that would be too close to privatization. So at that point, I'd say, let's put it on the table. Let's have a discussion about a variety of different ways to fix it.
And one real quick comment, though, in reference to the immigration. My son was in the military. He served with some fantastic undocumented Latinos, and they did become citizens. And I'm very proud that he served with these people, and they're excellent. I don't understand why we can't offer more pathways.
Terry, I'm Jean Seibel. I'm concerned about the SNAP program, used to be called food stamps. It was removed from the Farm Bill. Now what? What is going to happen to that program?
It stays as is. It hasn't changed one bit.
It was in the Farm Bill. It was taken out of the Farm Bill.
Which means that there were no changes to the program.
How can you take it out of the bill so it's dangling over here someplace? It was not part of the bill that was...
It goes in as the day before the vote. It has not changed. The bill would have made changes.
Such as?
Since there... some fraud issues, some security issues, there was even a drug testing requirement. There was another reform to allow states flexibility to use welfare to work as one of the requirements.
Which didn't work before.
And those were voted down. Now keep in mind that the Democratic side of the aisle voted against it because they thought the reforms went too far. There was a big chunk of Republicans that voted against it because they didn't think it went far enough. I was in a group, there was an email that went out that was read at my last town hall meeting that said I voted against the bill. I actually voted for the bill.
I thought I heard you say you voted against it when I was at that meeting.
Okay, I voted for the bill with the reforms. With the farm bill. So they're mixing some.
That bill you voted for had fewer SNAP benefits than the year before.
Yes,
So people
there was reforms in there to reduce.
for minimum wage, $40.
All right, well then, say there were reforms that offered a reduction, but
They can't even buy diapers. Diapers are not allowed.
well,
You know,
there's a lot of reforms.
they have to go. There's a store in North Omaha that will sell diapers each for whatever the price is, single diapers, because they can't afford to buy a box of diapers. That is a change that needs to be made.
All right, so SNAP to be used for diapers, is that the requested change? Okay, well, that remained in existence, so, all right.
Pago Day Lippert from Papillion. Congressman, Nebraskans are generally known for their independence, if indeed not their stubborn independent thinking. How is it that we don't see this behavior on your part? Rather, you seem, putting aside the war issues that we're facing right now, but you seem to follow the party line and do what you're told. This causes some of us to feel that you don't represent us in Washington. And once elected, aren't you obligated to represent all the people? That's a question. And I notice that your winnings have been waning, and I imagine soon to disappear. Because primarily, I think your go along with and your obstructionist attitude, not only yours, but that of the House. So could you answer the questions, please?
Well, I'm sorry, that seems more rhetorical. What question was
Well, the
there?
question is, how is it that we don't see this independent thinking Nebraska character in you, in Washington? We see you going
I
along.
would disagree with your statement.
Oh, okay, give me some examples.
Well, there's lots of examples. And go check the Washington Post. It rates my party loyalty. So
Okay. Well, I haven't heard about how you vote contrary to what the party tells you to do. So I don't feel represented by you in Washington.
Congressman Terry, my name is Jean Schuler and I'm from Omaha. And my question has to do with, would you reconsider the pathway to citizenship as an earned pathway? That it is not a brass ring, it is earned. That is, that if the law was so written that persons would be in line behind those who are in the pipeline already, so they wouldn't be jumping the queue, they would pay the fines and taxes outstanding. Would that sequence of events, which would, in the Senate bill, be 13 years, in the House comprehensive, it's 15 years. Would you reconsider it under that condition? Because it's my fear otherwise that you're adopting a view of second-class citizens who would be
I'm
here.
being stubborn and not
What's that? No. Finish it? Yeah. Okay. Because the alternative to legal status that's not in some recognizably American form of this is how immigrants become, full members of the society, it's not recognizably American what you're suggesting, it seems to me, and really kind of a threat to our own identity. In Germany, it would fit because you do have these legal people who work and have no citizens' right, but this is not Germany.
Okay. So you asked if I would reconsider or not at this moment.
It's earned. It's not a brass ring.
I will keep listening on that point. I want to see how things develop, but I really have a strong belief that when people came here without documentation, without going through the legal process, that they shouldn't be rewarded with the ultimate prize. Now, to solve the issue of de facto amnesty, to bring people out of the shadows, give them a legal status where they can get their Social Security card, where they can go to work without having to risk being taken advantage of. We can keep the families together. Get in line for the microphone. And we can keep the families together that way. So, appreciate it.
I'm Father Mike McAndrew. I'm a Redemptorist missionary, and I came back to Omaha in May to work at Holy Name Parish, to work with the Latino community here. And I'm happy to be back in Omaha, my hometown. I grew up here. But I want to say, Representative Terry, I appreciate the Congress and the President right now speaking about immigration reform. But it looks so limited, and it's not even close to call it comprehensive. I wish that, I believe the immigration issues are so wide, and all the people seem to talk about is security, work authorization, maybe the dreamers, but we're not taking it into consideration so many people, such as the people who are American citizens who've married undocumented people, the children who were born here, whose one or both parents have been deported from this country. What I heard, I ask you, is there any willingness on your part to follow a conscious decision on a moral issue of immigration when it may be opposed to your party or to the line of certain people in your constituency?
By the way, my position is the minority position in the party. You asked about not following my party. I am in the minority by going to a legal status.
My name's Patrick Murray, Congressman. Thank you for being here. You said that you were getting a response of about 99% people on the Syria question. Maybe I could ask those here on the question of pathway to citizenship. Would you stand if you favor a pathway to citizenship, so the Congressman can get some idea, at least of this? I'd actually like to ask about a different aspect that hasn't come up with regard to immigration, and I was somewhat saddened by your opening remarks, although I can understand what you're saying there about the pressing business, but it seems to me immigration reform is so long overdue. And so maybe it's going to be October, maybe it's November, but the thought that none of this would even come to a vote is really kind of shocking to me. I wonder what you think about the SAFE Act. There seems to be some movement within the House of Representations to essentially, roughly speaking, nationalize the Arizona Act and turn local police forces into immigration immigration agents essentially enforcing immigration law. I know our local chief of police, Chief Schmaderer, I do not think is in favor of that. I had a chance to talk with Chief of Police in Lincoln. I know he doesn't want any part of that. What's your thinking about it?
I'd have to read the SAFE Act. The SAFE Act does what now? It says that our local police can go out and arrest undocumented.
That's what I understand. That they would be working with immigration to enforce immigration law. When I've speaking with the chief in Lincoln, he said repeatedly, "Look, I'm not here to enforce federal laws."
Okay.
What do you think about having
I have
local
not
police,
looked.
Omaha police, Lincoln police, a federal legislation that would mandate, would really force them to be.
Well, I would talk to the
immigration
mayor
laws?
and the police chief on it.
Pardon?
I would talk to the mayor and the police chief.
Okay, I think you'll find what they'll say. What
Okay.
I'm saying. Okay, thank you.
Congressman, my name is Ernesto Medina. I'm a priest in the Episcopal Diocese of Nebraska, and I currently have the privilege of serving as president of the board for the Latino Center of the Midlands. I take significant pride in stating that I've been successfully brainwashed by the public school system. I believe in the American dream. I live the American dream. It is at the core of my DNA. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to be here to make some comments with you. As part of my profession, there is an expectation not only of my community but also of myself to believe in miracles and to give thanks for that. So I'm thankful for the miracle of the movement that you've made in the direction of at least talking about providing legal status, but I have to say I'm still praying.
Okay. So am I.
Yeah, part of being American, at least what I learned in school, is about being accountable and responsible for our behaviors and for our actions. I actually could probably agree with you if it wasn't for one very important fact.